In integral yoga, of course, all these techniques are not only acceptable, they are considered essential or desirable, but at the same time, they are not the main part of yoga. These techniques are basically to improve our instruments, that's the body and the mind. These are just instruments, and to improve the performance of these instruments, we use these techniques. But then that is not considered the essential part of sadhana. Sadhana is how you use these instruments. So the work that we are doing throughout the day, and one might even say how we sleep at night, all this is a part of sadhana. And the celebrated quote of Sri Aurobindo, all life is yoga, does not mean all life, no matter how lived, is yoga. What all life is yoga means is that all life gives us an opportunity for the practice of yoga. Not Savitri is a scripture which has just about everything. There is embedded within Savitri also quite a bit of guidance for each one of us for our own sadhana. And that's why I thought today I'll base it on that aspect of Savitri, which we sometimes miss.
Namaste. Welcome to the session. On behalf of Team Yoga, Education and Spirituality, I wish you all a happy International Day of Yoga. The title of today's talk is Sadhana in Integral Yoga, based on Sri Aurobindo's Savitri. The speaker with us today is Dr. Ramesh Bijlani, who is a prolific writer and an inspirational speaker. He loves to use the gift of communication that he has received from the divine for dispensing small doses of love and wisdom from the inexhaustible pharmacy of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Once a professor at AIIMS New Delhi, Dr. Bijlani is now a spiritual seeker at Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. Welcome, Dr. Bijlani, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today for this special session. Looking forward to the talk, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Arinima. And my dear brothers and sisters who are here to listen to whatever might ramble on. Greetings to all of you on the occasion of the International Day of Yoga, and the love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you. Thanks to the International Yoga Day, the word yoga has become extremely popular, and its popularity is on the rise. And not far behind can be the word sadhana. That is also getting more popular naturally, because at least everybody knows that sadhana is what we do in order to make progress in yoga. However, both these words, yoga and sadhana, are widely misunderstood. Yoga is equated with its techniques, the asanas and pranayamas, quite often. And sadhana is then equated with these asanas and pranayamas. That is how you progress in yoga. And that's why very often, since I live in Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch, I'm very often asked, you're working for the ashram, how much time do you get for your sadhana? They see a division between the work that I do in the ashram and sadhana. The work they don't see as sadhana. What they see as sadhana is how much time do I get to do asanas and pranayamas, and particularly for me, they think that how much time do I meditate every day? That is their idea of sadhana. Now, these are both ideas which you'll see overturned when we talk about integral yoga and the sadhana in integral yoga, because in integral yoga, of course, all these techniques are not only acceptable, they are considered essential or desirable, but at the same time, they are not the main part of yoga. These techniques are basically to perfect, or if not perfect, perfection is a far cry, to improve our instruments, that's the body and the mind. These are just instruments, and to improve the performance of these instruments, we use these techniques even in integral yoga. To the extent an individual can, everybody can't do all the asanas, everybody can't meditate properly. But all the same, to the extent we can, we do use these techniques. But then that is not considered the essential part of sadhana. Sadhana is how you use these instruments during the rest of the day. And that is what constitutes our sadhana. So the work that we are doing throughout the day, and one might even say how we sleep at night, all this is a part of sadhana. So that is the sort of not just something which is so unique to integral yoga as is sometimes portrayed, because in fact that is the spirit of yoga. Sri Aurobindo, while working out the synthesis of yoga and giving us this integral yoga, only tried to revive the spirit underlying all the major traditional schools of yoga, and tried to sort of correct this distortion and deviation that had taken place when yoga had come to be identified with its visible and external practices. And therefore, he had to lay extra emphasis on bringing yoga into everyday life in everything that we do. And the celebrated quote of Sri Aurobindo, "All life is yoga," means exactly that. It can be misunderstood also, because all life is yoga does not mean all life, no matter how lived, is yoga. What all life is yoga means is that all life gives us an opportunity for the practice of yoga. Not only eating and sleeping, but even the work that we do as a professional, the work that we do at home, be it household work or be it parenting, all these are opportunities for the practice of yoga. Now, with this little background, I'll turn to the PowerPoint, and this will be based primarily on Sri Aurobindo's epic poem Savitri, which has more than 24,000 lines. Why I chose this was because Savitri is a scripture which has just about everything, and quite a bit of it is on the sadhana, which is relevant to each one of us. There is the yoga of Ashwapati, which we know indirectly is the yoga of Sri Aurobindo. There's the yoga of Savitri, which we indirectly know is actually the yoga of the mother. Now, that may appear far beyond our reach. And of course, there's a lot of other material in Savitri, which is relevant to the future of the world. But there is embedded within Savitri also quite a bit of guidance for each one of us for our own sadhana. And that's why I thought today I'll base it on that aspect of Savitri, which we sometimes miss. So the topic is sadhana and integral yoga based on Sri Aurobindo's Savitri. Uh, Sadhana and integral yoga leans very heavily on the yoga of the Gita. Because as I was saying that in integral yoga, the emphasis is on bringing uh, yoga into daily life. And that is what the Gita also talks about. Yogastha kuru karmani. That is, be stationed in yoga while doing all your karmas. Whatever actions you are doing, whatever work you are doing, do it from a yogic poise, bring yoga into it. Another thing which is beautiful about the Gita is that while it goes into great depth, it does not emphasize just the final goal. It shows yoga as a process, as a journey. We can start from where we are, go as far as we can, and that is quite acceptable to Sri Krishna. And that is the spirit also in integral yoga, that most of us will not be able to complete the journey in a lifetime, but that doesn't matter. The journey itself is enjoyable. We can enjoy the journey and go as far as we can go, and then we can pick up the thread in the next life. And another thing beautiful about the Gita, which again finds a major place in integral yoga, is that there's a lot of freedom given to the seeker. Start with action or knowledge or devotion, whatever suits you best. And that freedom, if anything, made even more uh, liberal in integral yoga, that you carve out your own path. Depending upon your abilities, inclination, temperament, and circumstances, you can carve out your own path using some very broad principles. So the approach is very user friendly. Or if you might say, since yoga is education, if we say that we are all students, the seekers, spiritual seekers, or those on the path of yoga are students, We might use in current jargon, we might say that the approach of the Gita and that of integral yoga is highly student centered. So the student has this freedom. Of course, this freedom does not mean that you can do whatever you want. There are guidelines, and also that it's not that in the yoga of the Gita, on which integral yoga leans very heavily, there are three paths, one path for each one of us. One can start with anyone. One can use a combination of these even in the beginning. But then, if one continues on any of these three paths in the yoga of the Gita long enough and sincerely enough, eventually one would be practicing all the three. And if one were to sort of put it in one sentence, what is that? What will that fusion lead to? That fusion will lead to enlightened action. Action, of course, is important. Action with a particular attitude, which is the yogic attitude, is important. But that yogic attitude requires a certain minimum amount of knowledge. If that enlightens the action, then only it becomes a part of yoga. Sometimes, it's said that if anyone is doing his job very sincerely and with full dedication, he's a karma yogi. But that by itself does not become yoga. It goes a little beyond that, at least. You work as an instrument of the divine and have no attachment to the fruit, which is not necessarily involved in doing your job with full dedication. So, at least that little bit is important. And to be able to see its significance, some bit of knowledge is also important. So, it is enlightened action. But then enlightened action can become very sterile, uninteresting, dull. What is it that adds color, emotion, feeling, vitality, and enthusiasm to it? Bhakti, devotion. So it is essentially when the fusion takes place of the three paths, no matter how we start with what suits us best. But then if one continues long enough and sincerely enough on the path, eventually we reach a fusion, which is essentially enlightened action lubricated by devotion, or action enlightened by knowledge and lubricated by devotion. We arrive in this world with a certain purpose, and the purpose is spiritual growth. But then we are also born in a state of massive ignorance. And therefore, we look at life in very physical and concrete terms, and that type of an abstract, nebulous entity like spiritual growth or growth of consciousness as the meaning of life, the ultimate purpose of life, is something which is not, which does not strike most of us. And in fact, many of us may live our whole life primarily at what Aurobindo calls the physical vital level without uh, feeling that there's anything wrong with it. What is physical vital level? The life revolving basically around physical comforts and emotional satisfaction, and maybe some sort of a crude preliminary intellectual satisfaction. So, being physically in good health, having physical comforts and emotional satisfaction through ordinary pleasures, food and other types of comforts in food and sex and all types of. So the emotional satisfaction coming from the ordinary preoccupations of life, and then some bit of to that, if gets added some bit of intellectual satisfaction, we feel that life is okay, and then we go on living it. Live throughout our life is revolving around these concerns. But then there are some who, as a result of the homework that they have put in previous lives, who arrive in this life for a more conscious approach to the genuine purpose of life. But then they also very often need at least a trigger. They need a call. They are in a way asleep to their genuine purpose of life, and they need to be woken up. Now, how does that happen? Since everybody is not prepared for it, the divine does not call them either. So they don't experience the call. But the few who do may also not always respond, because it comes in so many ways and sometimes in very obscure and hidden ways. So this is a passage from Savitri which brings out this fact that heaven's call is rarer the heart that heeds. So not everybody is called, and out of those who are called, not everybody responds to this call. The doors of light are sealed to common mind, and earth's needs nailed to earth the human mass. Why does that happen? Because the ordinary human mind, which is full of ignorance, has been constituted in such a way that its doors are closed to the light. The light is there within us, in our souls, in our divine essence. But there's a barrier, there's our doors that divide this light from the mind, and the mind of the common man is as if sealed from this light. The barrier is locked. And why does that happen? Because there's enough to preoccupy us on earth. The earth itself uh, gives us enough needs to take care of our basic needs of food, having a family, and having other preoccupations in life. So the earth itself demands so much from us that that can keep us quite busy. So earth's needs nail to earth the human mass. So nail to earth, they we get fixed to this earth, we get nailed to this earth because of the needs and the demands that are made on us by earth itself. And the result is we do not respond to this call, which is coming not from earth, but from heaven. So we don't respond to this call from heaven because there's enough on earth to keep us preoccupied, and we do not respond to the call even when it is there. But then when the call does come, we may respond. And when is it that we are most likely to respond? Only in an uplifting hour of stress, men answer to the touch of greater things. So, in fact, it is when we are going through a tough time that we are likely to respond to this touch, this call from of something greater than what is there on this earth. Or alternatively, it may not be stress. In some cases, we may be lifted up by some strong hand. We may come across somebody who so inspires us that we feel like looking at something which is beyond the obvious, something which is not a part of our ordinary life, and we feel, yes, there is something more to life which is more important than I can see. So what is it? Let me find out. So that is as a result of some inspiration provided by some strong hand that tries to lift us up and gives us some taste of that heavenly air, which is rather blissful as compared to the struggle that we are going through on earth. So it may be in response to stress or in response to some inspiration from someone. Uh, Someone, maybe a person, maybe a book, maybe it become disguised in so many different ways. But some we can look upon all those collective influences as a strong hand that lifts us up and gives us a foretaste of that heavenly bliss. So we may then respond. But then we may respond, but still not stay there. We may slide back to again the earthly needs once again get nailed to earth. So even those who respond, they may slide back to the mud from which they climbed, because not only that appears important, appears as if those we have those responsibilities and obligations, also because it is very tempting to live a life which is full of, which is packed with the ordinary human activities, can be very interesting, engaging, entertaining, and amusing, and therefore we love it. We are familiar with it. So it has that touch of familiarity, which itself makes it something which we start loving, because anything unfamiliar, has a sense of fear associated with it. So that heavenly air may appear blissful, but at the same time, we have the fear of the unknown. And so we are even very few are called, still fewer respond. And for responding to it, we need some strong stimulus like a stress or a strong hand. And even if we respond, those who respond to this type of stimuli, they may not stay uh, uh, tuned to it. They may not continue to strive to move in that direction where the heaven is calling them. They are likely to slide back to the mud from where they climbed. But assuming that the person has responded and has not slid back into the mud, he starts his sadhana. So, what is this type of sadhana that he can do? Make of thy daily way a pilgrimage, for through small joys and griefs thou movest towards God. Very simple. So, make of thy daily way, whatever you do throughout the day. That itself is a pilgrimage. What is a pilgrimage? Pilgrimage is something where you go to get sanctified, to get closer to God, to move away from your ordinary concerns and feel closer to the divine. You depend upon the aura of the place, the vibrations of the place, the surroundings and everything, and whatever you heard about that place to bring about that alchemy, that change in you, so that now you can give a new direction to your life. That is what you expect from a pilgrimage. But then one doesn't have to go to a place which is normally considered a place for pilgrimage. The daily way, whatever you do every day, that itself is a pilgrimage or can be a pilgrimage. So, how you make it, that is what sadhana and integral yoga is about. Make of thy daily way a pilgrimage. And what is the way every day made up of? What is the path that we walk every day? It is constituted by small joys and griefs. And both joys and griefs both can take us closer to God. And in that sense, it can be a pilgrimage. So every day we are experiencing some small joys and some small griefs. Accept the small joys with gratitude and try to share what the joy that you get, and accept the griefs in a sense of with a sense of surrender, acceptance, also being grateful that the grief came, because that is itself an opportunity. If it was only joy, we would forget the call to heaven. So we respond to that call to heaven only because these griefs also keep coming. So use both joys and griefs for moving closer to God. Then further, thy acts are thy helpers, all events are signs. So whatever actions you do, whatever work you do, is helping you move closer to God. Whatever work you are doing. In the spirit of yoga, if you do it, that is considering yourself an instrument of the divine, being grateful for receiving the abilities and the circumstances for doing that work, and then not being attached to the outcome, because the outcome is in the hands of the one who has given us those opportunities for the work. And at the same time, putting one's heart and soul into the work, because the outcome may not be in our hands, but all the same, we should do it in the best way we can, put our heart and soul into it, because it is our privilege that we have been chosen as the instruments. The divine has no shortage of instruments, and the divine is not in a hurry. So it is not for, not that the divine needs our work, that we have been chosen as the instruments. It is for our own uh, life. It's to help us further in the journey of our own soul that we have been given that work. So it's for our sake that we have been chosen as the instruments for the work that we do. And therefore, the least we can do is to put our heart and soul into the work, do it in the best way we can. Thy acts are thy helpers. All events are signs. Events, whether they are ups or downs, whether they are fortune or misfortune, they are indications. They are indications for the direction in which we can go, indications how we can use every part of life for addressing the purpose of life, for moving closer to God. Waking and sleep are opportunities. These are also opportunities. So it's not only in the awake state when we are doing our work, etc., that is an opportunity. Sleep is also an opportunity. If we sleep with the right attitude, which essentially means that when we go to bed, or we sleep with the prayer, we try to review our day. What is it that during the day we did of which we can be proud? What is it of which we can be ashamed? And we also pray that the night be restful and peaceful, so that our batteries are properly charged by tomorrow morning. And then we are once again ready to do what is expected of us by the divine. So, whatever comes along our way, we are able to do it in the proper spirit, in the spirit of yoga. So, this is a requirement of the instrument. The body and the mind complex needs that sleep to recharge itself. So, let our batteries get properly recharged, so that we are once again at the service of the divine the next day. So, sleep is also an opportunity, not only when we are going to bed, but in fact, the mother has said, that we can divide our sleep into slices, which happens automatically. There are a few brief awakenings, which means waking up during the night. And we know that why that happens physiologically. That happens towards the later part of sleep, when you are alternating rather rapidly between slow wave sleep and rapid eye movement sleep, or the non-dream sleep and dream sleep. The alternations become rather rapid towards the later part of night. In the beginning, for quite some time, we are uh, for quite some time in the non-dream sleep for a pretty long time. But then after that, the alternation becomes more and more rapid as we approach the morning. So that is when, we are also likely to wake up a few times. So use those brief awakenings to once again uh, resolve and renew your aspiration for where you want to take your life. So sleep is also an opportunity. So all these actions that we do, the work that we do, the events, the pleasant and unpleasant that events that happen to us, waking time and sleeping time, all these are opportunities for the sadhana, for walking the path of yoga, for moving closer to God. All these opportunities have been given to us by an immortal power, that is the divine. The divine has so many ways in which it works in our lives. And here there's a little more detailed sort of description of what all uh, ways the divine works uh, in guiding us towards the right type of life. He works through the fierce vicissitudes of our lives. Fierce vicissitudes, major fortune and misfortune. He works through the hard breath of battle and toil, all the struggles that we go through every day in the course of our work and etc. The obstacles that we come across in our work, the difficulties, the hardships, the problems, so all the battle and toil. He works through our sins and sorrows and our tears. Our sins, which can tempt us in different ways and make us do things which we should not be doing, uh, and sorrows which come uh, they also lead us, sorrows, vicissitudes includes sorrows, but then there are minor sorrows, small joys and sorrows which are everyday. Major vicissitudes are major traumatic events. So there's a shade of a difference, but all the same, these are all unpleasant experiences. And tears, maybe tears of sorrow, maybe tears of joy, whatever type of tears, he works through all this. So it means that the divine is working through all these things which happen to us in our life to take us in that direction. We only have to interpret them properly. His knowledge overrules our nescience. And that is possible because we are in a state of nescience. Nescience is not knowing, or loosely speaking, ignorance. But his knowledge overrules it. Whatever the appearance we must bear. And since we know that behind all this, which we can't understand fully, we may not always interpret properly, but through all these vicissitudes and battle and toil and sins and sorrows and tears, behind all this is the knowledge of the divine who knows everything, which overrules our nescience. And we may look at only the appearance, that is, this is pleasant, this is unpleasant, this is difficult, and so on and so forth. How can I go through it? Whatever the appearance we must bear, we must accept whatever the appearance appears to be, because there's a lot that is behind the appearance. And behind the appearance is the knowledge of the one who knows everything, and that unseen of the hand of the one who is always loves us and is guiding us in the right direction. Whatever our strong ills and present fate, ills here means misfortunes, essentially. Problems and misfortunes, essentially misfortunes. Whatever our strong ills and present fate, whatever we feel is our fate, uh, we must bear it, we must accept it, even if we can see nothing but drift and bail. In the appearance, we may see only drift and bail. Drift as if life is just drifting. It does not seem to have any direction. It seems to be rudderless. It may seem rudderless, but as Aurobindo says somewhere in Savitri, the captain is always wide awake. The captain, the divine. We may feel it is drifting, it has no sense of direction, but the captain is wide awake. So it may seem like drift. And bale, what is bale? Bale is a big collection of things like cotton or wool or uh, grass, which has been tied up into a big bundle. So life may look to us like a bundle of all these sorrows and battle and toil and so on. And we feel that it is just tied up bundle. It's a package deal that we have got, but we can't make any sense of this package. So we may not make sense of the package that is the makes of our lives, all these vicissitudes and battle and toil and so on. We may not make any sense of it. or we may feel life is just drifting, but then a mighty guidance leads us still through all. So that guidance is there, that unseen guidance is there, which is taking us through all these vicissitudes and battle and toil, etc. Here there's a particular emphasis on pain, going through difficult phases of life, pain physical or psychological. Uh, Pain is the hammer of the gods to break a dead resistance in the mortal's heart, his slow inertia as of living stone. Now, pain is like a hammer. And what does this hammer break? A dead resistance in the mortal's heart. Because in the heart of our hearts, we still have that temptation for the ordinary earthly pleasures. And therefore, we resist this call. To break this resistance, we need these painful experiences. As Sri Krishna says in the Gita, that there are four types of devotees. And among those four types, the first is what? Artha. Artha is the one who is miserable. So, in fact, that is the commonest category out of those four types of devotees. It is the one who is miserable, one who is going through this pain, who turns to the divine, this pain, this difficult situation where he finds himself helpless. That is what breaks this resistance to walking the path of a path that takes him to the divine, and it overcomes his slow inertia as of living stone. We don't expect the stone to do anything. It has total inertia. But then a human heart is living, but it is more or less like a living stone because its inertia is only a little less than that of the stone, which means that it also wants to stay in its comfort zone, stay where it is, not make any change. And it is this pain that compels it to opt for that change because now that resistance to change has been broken. Now, since pain and grief and sorrow can bring all this to us and therefore can be considered something which is desirable, because without that we may not turn to the divine, but then Sri Aurobindo puts in this and you can see his sense of humor there, that well, pain may have all those uses. It is that takes us to the divine. But, oh mortal, he's addressing us, bear, tolerate it, accept it, but ask not for the stroke. Don't ask for getting hit. Huh? Too soon will grief and anguish find thee out. So don't look for difficulties, don't look for problems, don't look for pain. Enough of it will come uninvited. Okay. Now, aspiration, rejection, and surrender. Now, these are some of the three basic guidelines which we find in the sadhana of integral yoga. First, you must have an aspiration, a strong desire to go in that direction, to seek the divine. Then reject everything that seems to obstruct it. And since we have our own limitations, our own effort will never be enough. Surrender to the divine. So there are several places where these three also occur in Savitri, and I've taken a small sample of that. Now are a few lines on aspiration. How do we get that aspiration, that call which leads to our feeling that, well, this is something worth pursuing? An inarticulate whisper drives her steps, of which she feels the force but not the sense. A few rare intimations come as guides. Sri Aurobindo has used this her, which I'm very happy about, because it happens not only to men, this can happen to women. And probably, if you look around, it happens probably more often to women than to men. Look at any event in yoga or anything nice going on, you find much more women than men in it. So an inarticulate whisper drives her steps. So it is something which is like a faint whisper, but it seems to drive her, it seems to goad her, it seems to push her, it seems to nudge her, taking her in some direction, as if it's experiencing a pull in direction or being get pushed to some direction, but only an inarticulate whisper which is driving her steps, making her walk in a certain direction, and she just walks it without fully realizing why and how. She feels the force. She feels that the force is very strong, which is taking her in that direction, but not the sense. She can't make full sense of why she is pushed in that direction. Now, that is aspiration. You feel drawn to something, feel the pull, but and you can feel the pull is very strong, but you can't make out any sense of it. You can't fully interpret it. You can't see why it is happening. Where am I going? Where is it taking me? So that sense of wonder, that sense of uh, inquisitiveness remains, but you are not sure about what sense there is in this pull, which is taking me in a particular direction. Helplessly, I'm walking that path, but why is it happening? It's only a few rare intimations which come as guides. So keep coming those little glimpses, those little intimations that seem to guide you, but nothing very clear cut about why you are going there. And what are those intimations? And what is it that you think that you will get by walking that path? You think that by walking that path, you will get a mind unvisited by illusions, gleams. Things which are just illusions, which appear to be glamorous. Illusions can be very glamorous, but actually they are far removed from the reality. So a mind which is not taken, which is not engrossed by those glamorous illusions, which means a mind which is not visited by them, or if it is visited, the mind ignores them. So you are looking for a mind which is unvisited by illusions, gleams. The tinsel world, as it's sometimes called. So it can be very glamorous, but it's an illusion. Uh, so the aspiration is for a mind unvisited by illusions, gleams, a will expressive of soul's deity, a will which is strong, but strong enough to express what? To express what the soul is demanding of us, a strength not forced to stumble by its speed. Yes, we want to be strong, but for what? Not a strength which is just forcing us to speed up, and in the process stumble. Because the type of strength that we need on the spiritual path is a steady strength, not characterized by much speed. It's a slow process. Speed itself is stress. Slowing down is relaxation. And we feel so because, when you are on the right path, speed is not there. And if speed is not there, you are less likely to stumble. Less, less, less the speed, less the chances of an accident, less the chance of stumbling. You know, Driving also, the general principle is lower the speed, less the chances of an accident. A strength not forced to stumble by its speed, a joy that drags not sorrow as its shade. We know that joy and sorrow, they coupled to each other. They are a part of the dualities. How the joy that we get through fulfillment of some desires ultimately is lost and gets replaced by sorrow. So, how joy and sorrow are coupled, we are familiar with. They're a part of the dualities. But we are looking for the joy that is not dragged by sorrow as its shade, which is not accompanied by that sorrow. So, this is the type of glimpses we get, and we get so attracted by them. We get so enamored of them that we start walking that path. So, this is what strengthens the aspiration, the desire for having a mind. Because aspiration is essentially a desire. It's a desirable desire, a strong desire for something which is desirable. So we start desiring a mind which will not be engrossed in illusions, even if the illusions are glamorous, a will which is expressive of what the soul is telling us, which will give an expression to the soul's voice, a strength which goes in the right direction with full force, but not at full speed, and a joy that does not come coupled with sorrow. For these she yearns. The one who has the aspiration, she yearns for all this. And you see, this covers essentially all parts of the superficial parts of the being, the instruments, the body and the mind. The mind, has these two aspects, feeling and thinking. So it is the thinking mind which can get attracted by the glamorous illusions. So the thinking mind should undergo a transformation. The feeling mind should undergo a transformation so that it's attracted only by the joys which do not come coupled with sorrows. And the physical has these two aspects, not to just should not be strong, but there should also be a will, which of course is coming from the mind, but the body should cooperate in following that. So the mind should develop that will that can come from the mind, from the emotional part of the being, the thinking part of the being, and then the body should also cooperate in that will. So these are the sort of things which, in a way, unite all the superficial parts of the being, which are our major instruments, all these instruments should undergo this type of a transformation. That is what we yearn for, that is what we crave for, and that is why you develop that aspiration. Now, rejection, this second pillar of sadhana after aspiration. All that denies must be torn out and slain, because there's enough within us and enough in our life to oppose this type of a transformation, this type of an alchemy, this type of a change in our mind and body. So all that denies it should be torn out. It requires that ruthless treatment, torn out and slain, not just suppressed and said, no, no, please don't, please don't. That will not work. You need to tear it out and kill it, and crushed the many longings for whose sake we lose the one for whom our lives were made. So, all those longings and cravings of sensory pleasures and in the ordinary preoccupations about uh, which have no end. As I said, there's no end to our longings. We may not want anything for ourselves, but we want something for our children. If we are assured that the children are in good shape, then we want our grandchildren to be in good shape. And it's said that if one were assured that the next 7 generations of yours need not worry, then he'll say, what about the eighth? Hmm? So there's no end to those longings. And for the sake of those longings, we lose the one for whom our lives were made. Our lives were made for union with the divine, not for all these longings. But then for all these because of all these longings, we lose the one for whom our lives were made, the one with a capital O, the one divine. And therefore, all these longings should be crushed, torn out, and slain. All that denies must be torn out and slain, and crushed the many longings for whose sake we lose the one for whom our lives were made. Three beautiful lines. And as you'll see, there's no comma after the first or the second line. Because this is a particular style in poetry. Mm. It's not that Sri Aurobindo didn't know the technical rules of poetry. This is called enjambment. There's a particular style, a proper style in poetry which works like this, and you see that's why there are no commas, and it makes more sense if you look at them in continuity. Now, surrender. One beautiful sentence: a vast surrender was his only strength. He's referring to uh, the yoga of Ashwapati, who has made a lot of progress on the path of yoga, but then he finds that his own effort is not sufficient. He needs his only strength is in fact surrender. Now surrender needs a little more consideration because it can be easily misinterpreted. So I've taken a few things about surrender from sources other than Savitri also, and and this is from one of the letters that Sri Aurobindo wrote to one of the disciples in response to perhaps some question. There must be no tamasic, inert or passive surrender to the mother. Surrender to the mother, surrender to the divine. It's the same thing. Uh, there must be no tamasic surrender. A passive condition can bring much peace, quietude, joy, even, but it disperses the being instead of concentrating it in wideness, and the will becomes atrophied. Surrender must be luminous, active, a willed offering to the mother, and reception of her force and support to its workings. Because surrender can easily become inert and passive. That is, I have surrendered, now I need not do anything. That is tamasic surrender. Tamas is about laziness and ignorance. So this reflects both ignorance or delusion as well as laziness. So it's a tamasic surrender, which is passive and inert. Because this type of passive condition can bring much peace. You feel that now that I've surrendered, I'm totally at peace. So it can bring that peace, it can bring quietude, it can sometimes even bring joy. But all the same, it does not lead to much progress, genuine progress on the spiritual path, because it disperses the being. Because then you are doing all sorts of things and saying, well, I can do whatever I want because I've surrendered. So, the divine will take care of everything. So you seem to get total freedom, and the result is freedom which is not desirable, that type of freedom, and because you are dissipating your energy in different directions, much of which may not lead to any genuine progress, instead of concentrating your energies on that one goal, that is approaching the divine. So instead of concentrating on that, because you have sort of developed an undue dependence on the divine, because you have surrendered to the divine, uh, this undue dependence and not putting in any effort yourself concentrated in that direction, he concentrated if in that direction, it can lead to a dispersion of all your effort, and the will becomes atrophied. Your will, instead of remaining strong, in fact it becomes weak. What should the proper surrender be like? Luminous. That is, it should be illumined by knowledge. Knowledge that yes, I have limitations. That's why I need to surrender. I can make mistakes. Therefore, I'm ready to subordinate my will to the divine will. Now, this is luminous surrender. Voluntary, active, cheerful, a willing surrender, not just a tamasic surrender. Surrender must be luminous, active, a willed offering to the mother, offering of all the good that you do, all the good that you have, and all the weaknesses that you have for processing. But that doesn't mean that we don't put in our own effort. We put in the effort for in the work that we are doing before offering it to the mother. And we also work on our weaknesses in spite of our limitations. But then we offer to the mother for further processing, realizing our limitations. And all this leads to what? We are able to receive her force. It increases our receptivity to her force. Her force, or the force of the divine, the grace of the divine is always available to us. That force is always working in us, but we need to be receptive to it. And this type of surrender, which is luminous, active, cheerful, willed, voluntary, this type of a surrender increases our receptivity to the force of the divine and lets it work in us. There's a beautiful pocket book by Sri Aurobindo, The Mother. And here again, we find a concentrated sort of a few pages on aspiration, rejection, and surrender. I have just put a few lines from there. That the personal effort required is a triple labor of aspiration, rejection, and surrender. An aspiration that is vigilant, constant, and unceasing. Very important adjectives for aspiration. Vigilant, that is always watching that yes, the aspiration is there, and therefore making use of every opportunity to uh, that is available to us in life, and not missing any opportunity that becomes available. Constant, that is not there today and gone tomorrow. It should be constant and unceasing. Rejection of the movements of the lower nature, because we have this higher nature, lower nature, both within us. We are made up of many parts, many levels. They are all within us. And reject everything that comes from the lower nature. Surrender of oneself and all one is and has. So total surrender. But total surrender is the ultimate goal. Surrender is also a process like everything else in yoga. Start with what you can. Make sure that you don't keep withdrawing it and then renewing the surrender when you find yourself helpless. That also happens. Sri Aurobindo has talked about it in this book, that not only made, surrender is made when you find yourself helpless. Then, you recover from that problem, the surrender gets withdrawn, and once again, you start feeling that I can do everything. You start becoming totally self-reliant. Surrender is withdrawn. So don't withdraw the surrender. It should keep increasing. Now, this in a way, again, is related to rejection, that there are enough difficulties and pitfalls on the path, and therefore rejection is a very important step in sadhana. And this is again from Savitri, difficulties and pitfalls. A whisper lures to evil the human heart. Evil can be very tempting. It's tempting for the child, it's tempting for the adult. The child, um, uh, throws a stone at a dog, or teases somebody. uh, so many things the children do. They are naughty, they know it is wrong, and yet they do it because it can be very tempting. And adults do the same. It's just that the crimes and faults that they commit are much more serious. Evil is tempting because our heart is not totally in tune with the soul. It takes certain joy, maybe a mixed and adulterated joy, a joy which is adulterated with a sense of guilt, But all the same, it at that moment is lured by the pleasure it will get, even if it's a fleeting pleasure, and forgets the risk that it carries, or the adulteration with the sense of guilt that it involves. So a whisper lures to evil the human heart. It seals up wisdom's eyes. So when we are overwhelmed by the emotions which pull us towards evil, the wisdom's eyes, that is the intellect, also goes to sleep. Its eyes become closed. It turns a blind eye to our movement towards that evil. Not only turns a blind eye, it may even find a justification for our turning in the evil direction. The intellect can be extremely versatile. The, it also seals up the soul's regard. The soul is always watching what we are doing. But even the soul's here, regard means, that watchful eye of the soul. That also gets sealed, that also is closed. It is the origin of our suffering here. It binds earth to calamity and pain. So, all this evil which tempts us is the origin of all our suffering here on earth, and that is what binds earth to calamity and pain. This all must conquer who would bring down God's peace. So, all this must be conquered, and one way to conquer is rejection, that is on our part, and surrender to the divine, which will give us that divine grace, earn us that divine grace. Let the divine work within us so that we will succeed in conquering. This hidden foe lodged in the human breast, man must overcome or miss his higher fate. So he has to overcome this. And this is what man must overcome. And if he is not, then he misses his higher fate. Then wait for the next life. ये लाइफ तो इस लाइफ में तो नहीं होने लगा. So you missed it in this life. If we are not able to conquer this foe, the foe of the evil that lures the heart. And what are those evils? Sri Ramakrishna put it in a very simple way. Kamini Kanchan. Basically, lust and wealth. These are the two major things that root causes for luring the human heart. Difficulties and pitfalls. One should not underestimate their strength. Imagine not the way is easy, the way is long, arduous, dangerous, difficult. That is what the journey of yoga is about. But it's an enjoyable journey all the same. At every step is an ambush. At every step, there are some hidden enemies there to force to attack us. At every turn, a pitfall. A thousand seen or unseen enemies will start up against thee, terrible in subtlety, against thy ignorance. So, there are so many enemies which will attack us. They're hiding, and they can be very subtle. They can appear very glamorous. They can put on a very nice looking face. They can sometimes appear to be a part of sadhana itself, formidable in power against thy weakness. And when with pain thou hast destroyed them, other thousands will surge up to take their place. So conquering some of them does not mean that more will not take their place. And you may say, well, all that may be true, but God's hand will be with me, and the Divine Mother near with her gracious smile of succor. So you may say that, well, because of that, I am protected. But thou knowest not then that God's grace is more difficult to have or to keep. Both are important. To have, first to earn it, and then to maintain it. It's difficult. It's more difficult than getting the nectar of the immortals. You heard of that Samudra Manthan. Huh? That's how the nectar, gods wanted that nectar, and the uh, asuras, the demons also wanted the same nectar. So getting that nectar of the immortals is difficult, or Kuvera or the Kuber's priceless treasures, the god of wealth, his priceless treasures. So both these are difficult to have or to keep. And to keep the God's grace is equally difficult. Ask of his chosen, those whom the divine has chosen to call with that heavenly call to the heaven. They have been chosen by him. And yet ask of them, and they will tell you how often the eternal has covered his face from them. That the eternal hides himself from even them whom he has chosen for walking this path. How often he has withdrawn from them behind his mysterious veil, and they have found themselves alone in the grip of hell. So they also have found that, felt as if they have been abandoned by God, and they are in the grip of hell all alone, unsupported by the divine who has chosen them to walk this path. They find themselves all alone, solitary in the horror of the darkness, naked and defenseless in the anguish of the battle. One quick example that comes to me of someone who found herself in this position was Draupadi, hmm, a devotee of Sri Krishna, calling him again and again by different names, and yet he taking so long to respond, and she finding herself all alone in that grip of hell, in that darkness, naked and defenseless. Now, here comes the assurance, the positive part. All you have to do is strive rightly. That is, make the right type of effort, right type of sadhana, and thou shalt have. You will succeed. Trust, and thy trust shall in the end be justified. Trust what? Trust the process. Have faith in the divine and trust the process by which it will happen. But the dread law of the way is there and none can abrogate it. Don't think there will be a shortcut for you or that somehow you will get away with it. Others may not have, but I am somewhat special. That's a feeling which comes very often. I'll get away with this little bit at least. Nobody is an exception. There is a law and none can abrogate that law by which you will reach the goal. And you will not reach the goal without passing through these difficulties. None can reach heaven who has not passed through hell. Now, Sri Aurobindo's yoga, in fact, goes beyond the personal salvation. It has a collective goal. That is, there should be an upliftment through this yoga of the human race. The human race itself should undergo a change. And you find glimpses of that also, why the individual salvation is not enough. Few are they who tread the sunlit path. Sunlit path, those who walk the path which is lit by the divine, which is like the sun, in contrast with the path which is lit only by our ignorant minds, which is like a little torch. So instead of walking on that torch-lit path, there are few who have walked the sunlit path. Sun can be very dazzling. So only few respond to that call, few tread the sunlit path. Only the pure in soul can walk in that light which is dazzling. And exit is shown. But those who do walk, they find that, yes, you can get out of this difficult world full of problems and sorrows and difficulties. You can escape from it. You can escape from the sorrow and darkness and the chain that binds you in this world. But how shall a few escape to release the world? But just a few escaping all this does not relieve the world as a whole, does not release the world as a whole from all the sorrow and suffering, which we think is an integral part of existence on this earth. The human mass continues to linger beneath the yoke, that which binds it, it continues to be under it. Escape, however high, redeems not life. So individual escapes, no matter into how high a, at how high a level, into what high a heaven, they do not redeem life on this earth. Life on earth still continues to be miserable. Life that is left behind after the few have escaped, that life continues to be as it is. The earth continues to be in a fallen or decadent state. Escape cannot uplift the abandoned race, the human race, or bring to it victory and the reign of God. So, just a few escaping cannot do what should happen, that is, the reign of God on the kingdom of God getting established on earth itself. For that, what is needed? A greater power must come, a larger light. In fact, that is what Savitri is about. Savitri came as that greater power to accomplish this goal, which is beyond humans who may at the most escape as individuals. So the greater power came, and towards the end of Savitri, what did this greater power say? What is it that will lead to what she is here for? To uplift the human race. Awakened to the meaning of my heart. So she's saying that after getting all the knowledge that she had to get during that journey, uh, which Savitri is about. Awaken to the meaning of my heart. You know, a few rishis in the forest, while she was coming back from the forest after bringing Satyavan from the jaws of death, ask her, what is it that you have found? And she says, all that I have learned through all this, that I have gone through, all this purification and enlightenment that I have gone through, all what I have learned by getting awakened to the meaning of my heart is that to feel and feel love and oneness is to live. That life becomes meaningful, human life becomes meaningful when it is full of love, which in turn has been inspired by a sense of oneness. And this the magic of our golden change. So the golden change that she is here to bring about on earth is like magic. You know, think of a world which is full of evil, sorrow, and suffering to turn into a world which is full of love, peace, joy, and a sense of oneness. That's like magic, that's alchemy. For that magic, the formula is very simple. To feel love and oneness is to live. So if human beings start living like this, that is what will lead to this magic. This is all the truth I know or seek, O sage, she's telling those sages in the forest. So this is the final message of Savitri. The comes on the last page. One may call it the Mahavakya of Savitri. To feel love and oneness is to live. That will lift us up and will also pave the way for upliftment of the human race. Savitri is a treasure to explore, but those who find it a little difficult or unapproachable at this stage can turn to this collection of Sri Aurobindo's works, one passage on each page, 366 pages. So in 1 year, you can complete it. And they're from different works. But out of these 366 pages, which this book has, about 100 passages are from Savitri. And if you, if there's an index, if you look up sadhana and integral yoga in the index, you'll find there are about 40 passages on sadhana and integral yoga, some of them from Savitri and some from other works of Sri Aurobindo. This is a book that was published last year by the National Book Trust. The title is The Diary Divine, Daily Dose of Timeless Wisdom. Daily Dose of Timeless Wisdom because like a diary, it has 366 pages. Just read one page a day. Each page has a standalone passage from some of Sri Aurobindo's works. You'll complete the book in a year. We always love to hear from you. And the email is yes@yesspirituality.com. Gratitude to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo for making the session possible. And thank you all for being there.
Thank you so much, sir, for this enlightening and beautifully insightful session. Let's open the session to the participants now. Participants, if you have any questions or if you want to share something, please go ahead. You can raise the hand, unmute yourself and speak up, or you can even drop your messages in the chat box and I can read it out. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. It was very enlightening talk.
Thank you, Adarshi.
Very inspiring talk, sir. And just I'm very curious to know if this the larger light which you're referring to, what exactly does that mean? I mean, what exactly does it mean?
Larger life, do you mean for the individual or a change in the world itself?
Sir, the larger light which you
Light.
referred to,
Yeah.
yes. Uh,
Oh,
so what
light. Light
Savitri?
we use as a symbol. Light is a figure, a symbol of total knowledge. And that's why, sometimes the sun is considered a representative of that, because that's the brightest object we know. So light essentially is something which is uh, associated with total knowledge, and that is associated with the divine, because that is the only entity that knows everything. And along with the light, it also has the power to do everything. It can do everything, and it knows everything. So it has that light as well as that power. And of course, it is capable of Ananda. That is essentially what Sachidanand is about. And we have a spark of that, a representative of that within each one of us, and that is our soul. And the soul has that dynamic aspect which can guide us and give us a sort of at least a spark, a ray of that light of the divine to guide us.
Thank you for the lecture. I have some questions on the sadhana. Are there required physical exercises or energetic exercises like yoga as basis of the sadhana? Because I read the supramental manifestation, where Sri Aurobindo advises to make your body strong to be able to carry the divine light or the divine energy. And I also saw from Prahab in the old times, there is a website where he gives a lot of exercises, advices, not that I do that, but I do yoga and Tai Chi to have a sort of basis for physical strength.
Well, as I said right in the beginning, and I think you were there right from the beginning in the session, that yes, the exercises that you're talking about are a part of sadhana, but only a small part of sadhana. And as you yourself said, make the body strong through those exercises. For what? For supramental transformation. So the strength that you get, the strong body that you get through those practices is a means to an end. It is not an end in itself. That is what integral yoga is about.
Yeah, I agree with that. But we have a lot of discussions here in Holland, like what we have to do for the sadhana, and not many people do this kind of things. I myself, I read Savitri, and I am member of a Savitri group in Holland, so we study a lot of it. But another question I have is, do you wait for the Shakti to say come down, the Mahashakti or Shakti, or can you say do it yourself by opening and receive it? Because that is another argument we have, that some people say you have to wait till the Divine Mother gives it to you, and others say you can also open yourself and get it.
Well, I think this is one of the pitfalls. When you read Sri Aurobindo, we get a little too preoccupied with supramental transformation. Whereas what Sri Aurobindo has said is that supramental transformation will not happen till the psychic and spiritual transformation is complete. Those two can continue on their own. On their own means that they can continue simultaneously or in succession, one after the other. But supramental has to wait for a total psycho-spiritual transformation, that is psychic transformation and spiritual transformation. So it is the supramental transformation in which you are talking about the descent of the Shakti to transform all parts of the being totally, to divinize every part of the being, to make it to bring that supramental consciousness in all parts of the being. Now that is the final stage. Even till the overmind stage, that does not happen. That is a part of the psycho-spiritual transformation. The psychic transformation, which essentially is your own effort by which you are making an ascent. and the supramental transformation, in which you are letting the divine influence descend in you to help your own efforts. So the ascent and the descent are going on. The ascent through psychic transformation, the descent through the spiritual transformation, and till that process is complete, the supramental question does not arise.
Well, I hope in my 40 years yoga something happened. I started when I was 35, now I'm 78. So I have a long way, but I think you are right. Things have to happen first. Another note you made was you have to go through hell before you can go to heaven. And I was, the mother said the same. She found in the deep, she found the golden spring. So, yeah, I like to ask you how you find the golden spring or the golden door in the subconscious.
The golden door, which divides the supramental from the overmind. In the Upanishads, Hiranmayena Patrena, the golden door which the mother broke on 29th February
that's
1956.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that golden door, I think the two golden doors are the same. The mother, which the mother hit with a hammer on 29th February, and the Hiranmayena Patrena, that golden lid, which Isha Upanishad talks about, they're essentially the same. And that is something which, at least I can't talk from personal experience. I'm nowhere near that. So I can't talk about it from personal experience.
Okay. Yeah, me neither, but I'm just curious because I'm curious about the yoga of the cells, which Mother speaks about. I'm translating her books in Dutch, say the whole series of books from 17 books. I'm translating in Dutch, and I get many of these notes of her about this subject, so I'm curious. Okay, thank you for your information. It was a good lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before closing today's session, we quickly inform that the recording of today's session and all guest talks are published on our YouTube channel, Yes Spirituality. Please do visit this channel and you can explore vast content on yoga, education, spirituality, and related subjects like psychology and wellness. Thank you so much, sir, once again for spending your valuable time for all of us and participants. Thank you so much for being with us today. We'll close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.